wasn't that bad. It was kind of cute. Shut the f up, bro. Please, shut up. I can't do this. I really can't. Stop. Just stop. He said, Gugu, are you helping tie my hair? Or are you thinking of doing something? You know what? We're just gonna need to have a talk later, sir, about what you're saying. Hello, everyone. My name is Ulysses N. Owen. You can call me Owen, and I'm a BL author. Today, we're going to be reacting to Heaven Officials Blessing, Volume 1, Chapters 4 to 6. I just wanted to say I deeply apologize that this reaction is so late. Some family emergencies kept me away from my reactions. I just wasn't in a good position to do any of that, so I had to focus my attention elsewhere. But hopefully things will stay calm and I can continue on with my work. But anyways, let's get on to the reaction. I really want to meet Hua Qiang again. So let's go. I just wanted to show you guys how chaotic my workspace is. There are like 10 different fandoms here. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, we have Bladey, FNAF. I don't even want to talk about this. Oh, look, my Windmaster. I finally finished it and I put lights on it and now he glows. But anyways, how are you guys doing? First, a drink. Okay. Here we go. Guys, tell me to stop playing Baldur's Gate 3. I need to stop. Okay, so where were we at in this book? Mountain-locked ancient temple, forest of hanging corpses. That sounds great on this Sunday evening. Wow. Fu Yao noticed that Xiao Ying had shrunk into the crowd, and he frowned. Why is there a woman here? Bitch! Excuse me? While his tone wasn't furious, it didn't mean well either. When Xiao Ying heard him, she bowed her head. Xie Lian explained. She was worried, so she came here to look. Fu Yao questioned the others. Did you all come up with her? The crowd was a little uncertain at first, but then they replied, don't remember. Can't tell. No, when we came up she wasn't here, right? Either way, I didn't see her. Me neither. Xiao Ying quickly said, it's because I was following secretly. Xiao Peng Tol immediately cut her off. Why did you follow in secret? Are you guilty of something? Are you the ghost groom in disguise? With such an This is why women choose the bear, okay? With such an accusation, the space near Xiao Ying immediately cleared out, and she waved in a fluster. No, I'm Xiao Ying. I'm real. She turned to Xie Lian. Young master, we just saw each other. I helped you put on rouge, did your hair and your whole makeover. Xie Lian could not find the words to reply to that. Everyone turned their eyes on him and some started to whisper among themselves. He vaguely heard the words hobby, abnormal, unbelievable, and he cleared his throat. This was a mission requirement. Nanfeng, Fu Yao, you... Xie Lian looked around, and only then did he notice that Nanfeng and Fu Yao had been staring at him oddly the entire time. They very rigidly pulled some distance away from him. The way they were staring at him gave him goosebumps from head to toe. Is there something you wish to say to me? How could he have known that this girl's makeover work was so gifted, that his brows were shaped elegantly, his face was fair as jade powder, and his lips were touched with rouge? If he didn't open his mouth, then he was entirely a gentle, demure, and beautiful young lady. This gave the two a huge shock and mired them in disbelief, making them question their lives and feel uncomfortable all over. The face was still the same face, but they no longer knew who they were talking to. Fu Yao turned to Nanfeng. Was there something you wanted to say? Nanfeng immediately shook his head. There's nothing I want to say. Why don't you guys just say something? Xie Lian asked. Just then, some men from the crowd spoke up. This is the temple of Mingguang? There's a temple of Mingguang on this mountain? Amazing. I've never seen it before. The crowd looked over in wonder. Xie Lian, however, suddenly said, that's right, the temple of Mingguang. Nanfeng could tell something was off about his tone. What is it? Xie Lian replied, the north is clearly General Mingguang's territory. It's not like his worship isn't flourishing. So how come there is only the one temple of Nanyang at the foot of Mount Yuzhen? It was easy to understand why the Lord Official had prayed to the Heavenly Emperor. The Heavenly Emperor was the #1 martial god of the past 1,000 years, and his status was higher than General Mingguang. Naturally, the higher up you prayed, the more guarantee there was. However, General Mingguang and General Nanyang were equal in status, with not much difference. If it must be debated, then General Mingguang possessed 9,000 temples, over 1,000 more than Nanyang. So it was really hard to imagine why they would seek from afar and forego what lay close at hand. Xielian wondered. Technically, even if this temple of Mingguang on Mount Yuzhen was overtaken and people couldn't find it, they could have simply built another temple of Mingguang. Why build the martial temple of another god? Fu Yao could understand. There must be another reason. Right. There must be another reason that would make the people in the Mount Yuzhen area never build another temple of Mingguang, Xielian said. Can either of you lend me a bit more spiritual power? I'm afraid I'll have to go ask. Just then, someone made a commotion. Whoa! There's so many brides! That voice had come from inside the temple, and Xielian whipped around. He told that group to properly stay in the open ground in front of the temple, but they ignored him completely and went in. Humans are just silly creatures, man. They don't listen! Damn it! Yeah, I'd be annoyed. Nanfeng shouted, "The situation's dangerous, don't run around!" However, Xiao Pengtou rebuked him. Don't listen to him, guys. They won't dare do anything to us. We're good citizens, as if they'd actually dare kill us. Get up, everyone, get up! Get up! 92 for kick that drum! With him egging people on, over half the group actually started to move, and they ran into the temple along with him. You know what? At this point, just let them go. You know? Just let them die, man. I would have just been like, okay, we'll meet you in there. Give them like 5 minutes till like you, okay. Now I sound evil. Fu Yao waved dismissively and said apathetically, let them be, those unruly people. He sounded extremely disgusted, not wanting to care anymore. Me. Honestly, I would do the same thing. Everyone had turned to look in that direction, just in time to see a flash of a shadow outside the window. Xiao Pengtou hollered, "It's him! That ugly freak with bandages on his face." Oh, it's that guy! However, when Xielian reached the edge of the forest, he suddenly caught a whiff of blood. Sensing something off, and with alarm bells ringing in his head, he came to a sudden halt. He warned, "Don't go in!" He had shouted his warning, but those people thought, "I'll give chase even if you won't," and charged into the forest without stopping. Before long, they heard screams, and a few shadows stumbled out from the forest. They were the few who had barged in first earlier, and now they were staggering out. When the crowd saw them after they stepped under the moonlight, they were instantly scared out of their wits. From their faces to the clothes on their body, these people were stained with red, the blood gushing forth like a spring. If someone bled this much, it meant certain death. However, those men were still making their way toward them, step by step. Terrified, everyone retreated uniformly until they were behind Xielian. You idiots! I swear to... Although the hurled torch only illuminated the area overhead for an instant, everyone still got a clear look of what had been above. The swinging corpses of more than 40 men were suspended upside down at varying heights on the trees. No one knew how long their blood had flowed, but they had yet to dry up. They dripped and dripped, forming a terrifying scene, a forest of hanging corpses amidst a falling rain of blood. I mean, what else were you expecting, my dudes? Come on. When Nanfeng and Fu Yao came over and saw this scene, their expressions froze. After a moment, Nanfeng said, "Green ghost." Shut the fuck up! Wait! Are they talking about who I think they're talking about? Wait, wait. Are you serious? Wait, what? I'm like shocked. Wait, did they say this in the show? Oh my god. Okay, when I'm done reading this, I'm gonna rewatch season 1 and I'm gonna like look at all the stuff that they like, all the differences and similarities in the book. Oh my god. Nanfeng turned to Xielian. Don't go over there. It'll be a bit of a problem if it's him. Xielian looked back and asked, "Who are you talking about?" "A near supreme," Nanfeng replied. Lian asked, puzzled. Near supreme? You mean close to the power level of a supreme? That's right, Fu Yao said. The near supreme green ghost is a malicious creature who has been evaluated by the palace of Ling Wen as close to the level of a supreme. He adores games like this. Forest of hanging corpses. You could say he's infamous. He recalled when that young man led him all the way here. There had been the sound of rain pitter-pattering on the surface of his umbrella. Could he have held it up to shield him from the blood rain of this corpse forest? He let out a soft, ah, and the other two immediately asked, what's the matter? He thus gave a brief account of how he had met a young man while he was in the sedan, and how that young man had brought him here. When he was done, Fu Yao said skeptically, I noticed the enchanted array on this mountain when I came up. It was immensely tough, but he broke it so handily? Lian thought, rather, he crushed it under his heel without even noticing the feat, he said. Damn! Okay, that's right. This near supreme green ghost you speak of. Could that be him? Nanfeng considered it briefly. I've never seen the green ghost before, so I can't say. Does that young man you saw have any distinctive features? Oh, silver butterflies, Lian said. Shut up, I can't do this. Okay, drink time! Drink time! Fu Yao exclaimed in disbelief. What did you say? Silver butterflies? What kind of silver butterflies? Lian realized that he had probably said something significant and explained, they're like silver, yet also like crystal. They don't seem to be living creatures, but they look quite pretty. Ah! That's so fucking cute. He saw Nanfeng and Fu Yao exchange looks with expressions so grim their faces were almost green. After a while, Fu Yao said darkly, leave. Right now. We haven't settled the case of the ghost room yet. How can I leave? Lian said. Settle? Fu Yao said. He turned back and sneered. Seems like you have really tarried too long in the human realm. This ghost groom is merely a wrath. Even the green ghost of this hanging corpses forest is merely a near supreme, as pesky as he might be. After another pause, he suddenly said in a stern voice, do you know who the master of those silver butterflies is? Lian replied honestly, I don't. Even if you don't, there isn't time for me to explain now, Fu Yao said stiffly. In short, he isn't someone you can handle. You'd better hurry back to the heavenly realm and ask for reinforcements. Then you head back first, Lian said. The master of those silver butterflies never showed any hint of malice, Lian said. If he does harbor malice, if he really is as terrifying as you claim, then no one within the perimeter of Mount Yujin would be able to escape his clutches. All the more reason someone has to stand guard here right now. So why don't you go back first and help me seek reinforcements? Fu Yao was a straightforward person, so he really did leave on his own with a toss of his sleeves. Lian turned toward Nanfeng and was about to inquire further about that young man when there was another commotion in the crowd. Someone shouted, we caught him! We caught him! Lian was just about to take a closer look at the bandaged boy when Xiao Yang rushed over. She yelled, you've got the wrong person! This isn't the ghost groom, he isn't! Xiao Pengtou shouted back. He was caught red-handed and you still say he isn't? He paused, as if something had suddenly dawned on him. Then he continued. Oh, I was wondering why you're always acting so strange, always insisting, he isn't. So you're in cahoots with this ghost groom. I'm gonna grab this man, I'm gonna fucking throw him over the cliff! He waved his hand, and Ruoye flew out to give Xiao Pengtou a slap with a thwack. Oh my gosh! The youth finally toppled to the ground and remained still. They fucking knocked him out. This person was the lead instigator, so once he became immobile, the crowd didn't know who to take aim at and settle down. There were a few scattered outcries here and there, but the commotion was over. Thank God, man! Lian thought, finally, we can get down to business. I would have done that. I would have taken one for the team and done that in the first place, man. The bandaged boy trembled nonstop, but all he did was shake his head repeatedly. Nanfeng, who had been staring at him, suddenly said, who is the green? Oh my god, they're saying that. It's Chirong! Oh my god! Dude, all the way from here? Oh my god, did they say this in the beginning? Bitch, what are you doing here? Get the fuck out of here, it's not your turn yet. Oh my gosh, Chirong. I swear to fucking God. Okay, is the lighting better like this? Okay, I think you can see the book a little bit better now. I think. We're gonna see. The two looked out the window and saw that a mob of women in scarlet wedding dresses had formed a circle and were slowly closing in on the group of villagers. Yes! I don't think, I would not. I'm siding with the brides in this one. I'm like, go ahead. The group hesitated as they ran, but Xiao Ying immediately helped the bandaged boy over to stand inside. After some thought, she ran out again and dragged Xiao Pengtou, who was passed out on the ground, into the circle as well. Girl, leave him! Leave him behind, I'm begging you! The veils in his hands were spun to blurs as they were thrown with ease, forming countless red silhouettes flying through the air. The people inside the circle actually started cheering in spite of themselves. Nice, amazing, so amazing. Y'all should have listened to him in the first place, man. When Xielian heard them, he blurted out of habit, Thank you, thank you. Please support my act with money if you have the means, or with applause if you haven't. God, he's so fucking real for that. Oh shit. Oh fuck. Ling Wen, the all-knowing. I have a question. Do you know if the martial god of the north, General Ming Guang, had any intimate female friends? Ling Wen's voice rang in his ear. Your Highness, why do you ask? Oh my god. He's like, give me the tea or else I'm gonna... He's like, please, I need the tea. Old Pei really has had too many intimate female friends. Your question is so sudden. I don't know which one you're referring to at the moment. Bitch? I'm looking at you, General Pei. I'm looking at you. The fuck? Xuanji became a prisoner of war and was taken to the enemy camp. While the guards weren't paying attention, she was planning to end her life on the spot. But she did not succeed. A general cut her verdant sword in half with one swing of his blade and saved her. And this dashing General Pei of the enemy state was the General Ming Guang who later ascended. Never trust men. Don't trust men, okay? Just trust Xielian and Hua Qiang. Gonna write that down, okay? Xielian ran a couple of steps and leapt, scaling the roof, then looked down at the 5 or 6 brides who continued to close in on him down below. He wiped away his sweat. There isn't anything wrong for a woman to want to be the only lover in a life. You guys, wait. Just, hearing this story of General Pei being a total fucking asshole and then comparing it to everything I've heard like Hua Cheng do for Xielian, I'm just like, bruh. I know this was put in here for us to be like, damn, bro. Damn, bro. Damn. Standards are very high. But with someone like Old Pei, I'll be honest, it's already pretty good if he doesn't cheat on you. Jeez Louise. That's not good, man. Oh my. If the bandaged boy wasn't the ghost groom, and this group of villagers had also confirmed that the ghost groom wasn't among them, then the only place left to hide was among the 17 brides. Ah, that's my smart king right there. That's my smart king. What probably actually happened was that when he rushed out the temple entrance to give chase, the ghost groom remained in the temple full of black mist, brushing past him and returning to the back of the hall, hiding itself like a leaf among the trees, and mixing in with the corpses of the brides. Then the ghost groom wasn't a groom, but a bride, a woman dressed in a wedding dress. Since it was a woman, many things can now be explained. For example, why was there no temple of Mingguang on or around Mount Yuzhen? It wasn't that the locals didn't want to build the temples, it was because they couldn't. Xiao Ying had said, I heard that every time construction of a temple of Mingguang was in the works, there would always be a fire for some reason halfway through. This didn't sound like a coincidence at all, and it could be nothing but arson. Why set fires to burn temples? Under normal circumstances, it would happen because of hatred. So then, why would there be a temple of Mingguang on Mount Yuzhen that was locked within an enchantment to keep out visitors? Yet the maintenance and the craftwork of the divine statue within the temple were so exquisite. We're thinking, this is a big brain moment, you guys. This short, small woman before his eyes was dressed in red wedding robes, but there was no air of joy, only sorrow. The reason she was short wasn't because that was her natural stature, but because she was kneeling on the ground. The bones of both her legs were broken, but the legs remained, and she had been using her knees to walk all this time. The odd thump, thump sound he had heard was the sound of her dragging her 2 broken legs to hop across the ground. You know what? When I first watched this in the show, I felt really bad for her. Like, I didn't dislike her that much. And I think that's just the natural reaction. I feel really bad for this woman. I really do. Xiaolian and the ghost stared at each other unyieldingly for a while before he spoke up. Xuanji? It seemed it had been many years since anyone called her by that name. It was a long time before the resentment on her face quietly faded some, and a flash of light shone in her eyes. Was it he who sent you to find me? She asked. Xiaolian supposed that this he naturally referred to General Pei. Xuanji then pressed on. What about the man himself? Why won't he come see me? That passionate expression and hopeful tone while she spoke made Xiaolian feel that he'd best not say. He didn't. Seeing that he hesitated to respond, Xuanji slumped onto the ground. Her back leaned against that handsome, tall martial god statue. Her bright red bridal robe spread about her on the ground like a giant flower of blood. Xiaolian and Xuanji both looked out of the window at the same time, where Ruoye had formed the white circle. A man was trying to drag that bandaged boy out, while Xiaoying clung to the man's leg, not letting go. Bitch, this is not the time, man! If I was in a forest of hanging corpses with a man or a female ghost, I would choose the female ghost to be in the forest with. Yeah. Xiaolian saw that it was him again and mentally grumbled that he should have whipped harder earlier. Exactly. Best if the man was whipped so hard he didn't wake for 3 days and 3 nights. Yep. That's what you need to do, man. That's what we all should have done at the beginning. He shouted, "Go back into the circle." Xiao Pengtou saw that a stream of black mist had come lunging at him and hastily retreated. However, the bandaged boy was still in his grip, and Xiaoying was still clinging onto his leg, so in the end he was still too slow by a beat. Instantly, the black mist enveloped him, and he was then sucked back to Xuanji's hand. He turned his head to look. Wasn't this disheveled, long-haired, haunting, chilling woman the beautiful corpse he had touched among all those brides lying on the ground earlier? It wasn't until that moment that he finally learned what fear meant. Yes! Fucking... I hate this guy. He shrieked at the top of his lungs while Xuanji curled her 5 fingers, digging them deep into the back of his head. Oh shit! Oh fuck! In an instant, his skull was pulled out through the heavy layer of flesh on his scalp. Yes! Yeah, yes! And we cheered. As a bystander, Xiaolian didn't want to comment on who was right or wrong, but in his opinion, he really couldn't help but think, if you wanted to see him, could you not have used a saner method? In any case, if someone did all this because they wanted to see me, I would have 0 desire to show up. Oh shit. He's right. That girl, Xiaoying, saw that he couldn't hang on anymore, so she picked up a branch and came charging over. She was yelling as she charged, seeming to pump up courage for herself. But Xuanji didn't even need to lift a finger. She only gave a chilling look, and before Xiaoying had even gotten close, she was sent flying meters away and crashed heavily onto the ground headfirst. Oh shit. The bandaged boy croaked out loud. As he ran over, Xiaolian was shocked too, but right as he sat up, he felt a chill on the back of his head. Xuanji's 5 fingers were already in place, like she was going to yank his skull from his skin, just like earlier. In this dire situation, Xiaolian's right hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. He shouted, "Bind." A sharp whoosh sound echoed through the air, and the white silk bandage heeded the command, circling and twisting about Xuanji, trussing her up. Xuanji's legs were broken, so she couldn't dodge in time. Thus, with a heavy thud, she fell to her knees and started rolling on the ground, trying to break free of the white silk band. Yet the more she struggled, the tighter the bindings became. The instant he was set free, Xiaolian didn't even take a moment to catch his breath before he immediately got to his feet and ran to where Xiaoying landed. Xiaoying's face was covered in blood, and the crowd around clicked their tongues and sighed as they watched. However, she still had breath left, and she whispered, "Young master, have I made things worse?" Although she didn't make anything worse, she didn't actually help either. Xielian was already going to summon Ruoye at the time and didn't require anyone else's help. Besides, with that single branch of hers, even if she had managed to hit Xuanji, it wouldn't have done anything. Never mind that she wouldn't have been able to get near the female ghost's body in the first place. With all that, this could be said to be a completely meaningless death. Xielian answered, "No, you've been a great help. You see, the moment you came over, the female ghost's attention was diverted, which was how I had the chance to subdue her. Thank you so very much. But you can't do that again next time, alright? If you're going to help, you have to tell me first. Otherwise, if I don't pick up on it, things will go downhill fast." With tears still rolling down, she choked. "But even then, I still... Her breathing stopped and she passed with those words. The bandaged boy saw that she had died and started to weep quietly while hugging her dead body. As for Xielian, he reached out and helped close her eyes. He spoke to her mentally. "You're stronger than me." Right then, the sound of a bizarre bell tolled. Clang, clang, clang. 3 booming tolls, and all of a sudden, Xielian felt his head go dizzy. He wondered out loud, "What's going on?" Then he looked around. All the brides had collapsed to the ground, only their arms still up and reaching toward the sky. The crowd of villagers had also slumped, as if they were all knocked out by the sound of the deafening bells. Xielian himself felt his head become rather heavy, and though he forced himself to stand with his hand supporting his forehead, his legs went weak and he fell with one knee to the ground. Fortunately, someone helped support him. When Xielian looked up, it was Nanfeng. Turned out, the moment those 7 brides entered the forest, they immediately spread out. Nanfeng had run all over, almost the entirety of Mount Yujin, before he managed to capture all of them. Seeing him quite calm, Xielian immediately asked, "What's with that bell?" "Don't worry, it's reinforcements," Nanfeng replied. Xielian looked over, following his gaze. Only then did he notice that, before the temple of Mingguang, a row of soldiers had appeared, standing there since who knew when. Fucking finally, man! Are you kidding me? He needed help! That military general approached with his hands clasped behind his back, and came before Xielian, bending slightly at the waist, giving a quick bow. "Your Highness." Xielian hadn't yet opened his mouth to make inquiries before Nanfeng whispered next to him. "Oh shit. This is General Pei. Oh my god, jeez." Xielian instantly took a glance at Xuanji, who was on the ground. "General Pei?" General Pei noticed Xuanji on the ground and spoke. "The Palace of Lingwen informed us that this incident on Mount Yujin might be related to our Palace of Mingguang, and so this servant has come. I didn't expect that it really did have something to do with us. We have troubled your Highness." On his end, Xielian had already given Nanfeng a general account of just what the Ghost Groom affair was about. When he heard her, he wondered, isn't this General Pei? Could she have waited for too long and doesn't recognize him anymore? "This is General Pei," Nanfeng answered, "but it's not the one she's waiting for." Xielian was confused. Are there 2 General Peis? Yet Nanfeng replied, "That's correct. There are indeed 2 of them." Turned out, the General Pei this female ghost Xuanji was waiting for was the main god of the Temple of Mingguang. The one before them now was the deputy god of the Palace of Mingguang, a descendant of the senior General Pei. Gosh, that must be so fucking confusing! From the troop, 2 soldiers of the Palace of Mingguang approached and pulled Ruoye from Xuanji's person. After it affectionately wrapped itself back around Xielian's wrist, he gently patted it twice to comfort it. Xuanji allowed herself to be grabbed by those 2 soldiers, briefly dazed before she suddenly started struggling with force, cursing while pointing to the heavens. I'd be fucking mad too, are you kidding me? The 2 soldiers carried Xuanji, who was struggling like crazy, and dragged her off. Xielian spoke up. "General Pei Jr., might I ask, how will Xuanji be handled?" "Sealed under a mountain," General Pei Jr. replied. To use a mountain as a seal was certainly the usual way the heavenly realm dealt with monsters and ghosts. After a brief moment of hesitation, Xielian continued. "General Xuanji's resentment is quite strong. She couldn't let go of the hatred that stemmed from betraying her kingdom for General Pei. Perhaps sealing isn't the right long-term solution. General Pei Jr., however, only inclined his head. She said she betrayed her kingdom because of General Pei. She certainly did say so, Xielian said, and that it was because of General Pei that she became like this. Whether that's the truth, though, I don't know. If it must be said that way, it's not altogether wrong, General Pei Jr. said. She did betray her kingdom for General Pei. However, the details might be different from what bystanders might imagine. After she and General Pei separated, in order to keep him, General Xuanji offered up military intelligence of her own volition. General Pei was unwilling to win unfairly, so he didn't take the offer. Well, now, he never expected that the whole "I betrayed my kingdom for you" thing was actually something like that. Xielian replied. Then when she said both her legs being broken was also because of General Pei, she broke those legs herself, General Pei Jr. answered. Broke them herself? General Pei doesn't like forceful women, but General Xuanji has a strong character, which was why they couldn't be together for long. General Xuanji couldn't accept it and told General Pei that she was willing to sacrifice for him and change herself. Thus, she ruined her own martial skills and broke her own legs. With that, she basically destroyed her own wings to tie herself to General Pei's side. General Pei didn't abandon her to her own devices and kept her around to take care of her, but he never intended to marry her. General Xuanji's wish was never fulfilled, and so she killed herself out of resentment. Not for anything else, but just so General Pei would be sad. However, pardon my bluntness, the way he spoke had always been polite and overly calm. That would never happen. Xielian rubbed his forehead and didn't speak, thinking to himself, who the heck are these people? Bro, I know, right? Who the fuck are these people and why are we in their tea? We shouldn't be here. We shouldn't have come here in the first place. This is not our business. Your Highness, I will take my leave now. Xielian also cupped his hands and sent them off. Nanfeng commented, weirdos. Fuck, man, he really was just like, yep, they're weird. I fucking love that. Xielian thought. He himself was the laughingstock of the three realms, an infamous weirdo, so he'd best not comment on anyone else. Xielian, you are not like these. No. When the bandaged boy woke up, he sat next to Xiao Ying's corpse once more, hugging her, not saying a word. And so Xielian also sat down next to him. Don't be afraid. If there's a wound, then it must be dressed. I promise I won't be scared off by you. The boy hesitated for a moment, then turned around and circle by circle, he slowly unwrapped the bandages. His movements were very slow, but Xielian waited for him patiently and was already pondering the issues that would come after. This boy for sure can't stay on Mount Yujin anymore. But where can he go? He can't come back to the heavens with me, and I don't even know where my next meal is coming from. I'll have to think of a reliable way to settle him. And the green ghost, Qirong. Jeez Louise, Qirong! What are you doing here? Just then, the boy finished removing the bandages and turned around. And just as Xielian saw that face in its entirety, he felt like all the blood in his veins had drained completely. Fuck! No! Chapter 5. Red-Clad Ghost. The Burning of the Martial and Civil Temples. Excuse me? Wait, I don't think I remember what happens after this. On the face of the boy, as Xielian had first suspected, there was a field of serious burn scars. Except beneath the bloody scars, there were traces of 3 or 4 tiny faces. Those faces were no bigger than the palms of a baby, and they were scattered crookedly across his cheeks and forehead. After being burned, the features on each tiny face were shriveled in pain, as if screaming in agony. The sight of these weird, screaming faces squeezing and squirming on a regular human face was indeed more horrifying than any demon. Are you serious? Are you serious? Is the depiction in the show different? I'm thoroughly disturbed right now. I'm like, what the fuck? Xielian felt as though he were plunged into a nightmare the instant he saw this boy's face. A fear so immense paralyzed him until he couldn't recall standing up, nor tell what the expression on his face was, but it must have been intimidating. Boy was already on tenterhooks when he removed his bandages at that hesitant, slow pace. After seeing Xielian's reaction, he took a couple of steps back. As if aware of Xielian's inability to accept that face of his, he suddenly covered his horrifying face and leapt up from the ground, then let out a shout and fled into the deep woods. Xielian finally came around and shouted, "Wait!" he called out as he chased after him. "Wait, come back!" But Xielian had been dumbstruck for a good moment before he came around. That boy was obviously familiar with the, "Oh my god! So that's how it is?" No matter how Xielian yelled for him, he wouldn't show himself. There was no one around to help Xielian search, and his powers had to be exhausted by now, so there was no way he could contact the others through the array. He ran all over the mountain, searching for a good part of an hour to no avail. A cold breeze blew past and cleared his mind a little. Knowing that running around aimlessly like a headless fly served no purpose, Xielian forced himself to calm down. Maybe he'll go back to take Xiaoying's body, Xielian thought, as he returned to the Mingguang temple. But then, he stopped in his tracks. Many men dressed in black with grave expressions had gathered in the woods at the back of the temple, and they were in the midst of carefully unloading those 40-something upside-down corpses. A tall man with folded arms was standing before the woods, overseeing the operation. When he turned his head around, it was the exquisite yet cold face of a youth. It was Fu Yao. Xielian was about to speak, but was interrupted by the sound of footfalls behind him. Nanfeng had returned from sending the villagers away. Upon seeing the situation at hand, Nanfeng glanced at Fu Yao and said, "Didn't you run away?" Oh my gosh. The comment was not pleasant to the ears, and Fu Yao raised his eyebrows in displeasure. Xielian didn't want them to start another argument at a time like this, so he said, "I asked him to find reinforcements." Nanfeng sneered, "Well, where are they? I thought you could at least ask your general to come personally." Fu Yao replied coolly, "When I went back, I heard General Pei Jr. had already come to the scene, so I didn't bother our general. Even if I had, he's probably too busy to come anyway." I live for this. Xielian sighed. "It's my fault for being in a stupor. Miss Xiaoying's death was already a big shock to him. He probably couldn't take the blow of thinking that I was scared of his face, so he ran off." Fu Yao wrinkled his nose. "Is he really that ugly?" "It's not a matter of ugliness," Xielian replied. He has the human face disease." Oh my god, that's what it's got. Am I clueless?
Yes.
800 years ago, a plague swept through the kingdom of Xianle, and it wiped out the nation. Those who caught the plague would first develop small warts all over their bodies. Then, as the warts swelled, the skin would grow rough. The swollen parts would slowly grow more uneven, with 3 indentations and 1 protrusion, just like eyes, mouths, noses. The facial features would then metamorphize until the warts eventually took on the shape of a human face. If they were left alone, more and more human faces would grow on their bodies. It was said that some of these human faces, once fully formed, could speak and even scream. Are you kidding me? You guys, that's fucking terrifying. They called this the human face disease. Great, I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight, thanks. This terrifies me so much, okay? I hate getting sick. I hate being in hospitals. I am scared of doctors. I literally am just so scared of getting sick because I get sick so easily. Like literally, this is like my worst nightmare. I hate this. Fu Yao's expression went through a myriad of changes as he dropped his folded arms. That's impossible. It was exterminated hundreds of years ago. There's no way it could reappear. I'm not mistaken, Xielian only said. Nanfeng and Fu Yao couldn't refute him. No one could refute this if it came from Xielian. Xielian continued. There are many burn scars on his face, probably from self-inflicted burning to get rid of the faces. The first reaction of those who contracted the disease was usually to slice off the faces with knives or burn them away with fire. They would use any means possible to rid themselves of those lesions. Nanfeng's voice turned solemn. The boy is probably not a normal human being then. He has to be at least a few hundred years old. All else aside, is he contagious? Even though this was a severe headache, it was a question Xielian considered calmly and logically, so he replied with conviction. No, the human face disease is highly contagious. If he were still contagious, then the entire mountain would have been infected by now. Considering how long he has been hiding here, his condition should already be cured. Only the scars remain. The best they could do now was to return to the heavens, request that the palace of Lingwen conduct a search, and wait for news. After settling everything, he sat down and heaved a soundless sigh. This case was finally over, but Xielian thought that the few days since he ascended felt longer than an entire year of collecting scraps in the mortal realm. Climbing, jumping, flying, screaming, tumbling, disguising, and performing, his bones were going to collapse. Even then, there were still many mysteries and aftermaths left for him to deal with. Maybe he'd raise a barred banner and roam the world telling tales of how collecting scraps was better than ascension. Fu Yao lifted the hem of his robe and sat down next to him. Alas, he could no longer keep it in and rolled his eyes. How much longer are you going to wear that thing? It felt incredibly endearing, somehow, to see his eyes roll. Xielian finally took off the wedding dress, wiped away his makeup, and then realized dejectedly, was I talking to General Pei Jr. in this dress the whole time? Nanfeng, why didn't you remind me? Probably because you looked so obviously happy in it, Fu Yao replied. After running errands all day, Nanfeng finally sat down for a rest too. Don't worry about it. General Pei Jr. won't care. You can dress 10 times weirder and he won't tell anyone when he goes back. Xielian was grateful for all the errands this junior official had run and poured him some tea. Fu Yao concluded. In the upper court, there aren't many who are trustworthy and worth meeting. Xielian thought it was funny that Fu Yao sounded like he was speaking from experience and cautioning a newcomer. He wondered if Fu Yao only spoke because he had been bullied in the heavenly realm himself, and the experience had affected him deeply. But then again, even though Xielian had ascended 3 times, he never stuck around for long. So when it came to understanding the gods, he might actually know less than these 2 junior officials. Nanfeng, on the other hand, seemed to strongly disagree. Don't listen to such inflammatory statements. There's good and bad everywhere. There are still a number of trustworthy officials in the heavens. Ha! Trustworthy officials. Do you mean your general? Fu Yao sneered. Nanfeng responded. I don't know about my general, but definitely not yours. Xielian was long used to this kind of situation, and with other things on his mind, he didn't have the energy to pull them apart. You don't have to. Let's just watch them bicker all night. Xielian was... Okay, the case in the north had concluded. The first thing Xielian did upon returning to the heavens was to report the bandaged boy to the palace of Lingwen and place a request to search for him. Lingwen took the request with a grave expression. I will do my utmost to find him. Truly, I did not think this journey to the north would open such a giant can of worms. Thank you for your hard work, Your Highness. No, thank you, Lingwen, for doing all the paperwork, man. That must be so freaking exhausting, bro. If Your Highness is not busy, please enter the communication array. We are to have a meeting regarding what has transpired. Xielian also had many questions he'd like answers to. After leaving the palace of Lingwen, he wandered about and found a small stone bridge. The stone bridge crossed a small gurgling stream with crystal clear waters. He could see the clouds drifting under the water, and through the flowing waters and clouds, there stood the rising and falling mountain ranges as well as the vast, squarely erected cities of the mortal realm. This is a good place, Xielian thought, and so he sat on the head of the bridge, mouthed the password, and entered the communication array. It was one of those rare times when the communication array was bursting with liveliness, with voices echoing and reverberating from all directions. The first thing he heard was Feng Xin swearing. Holy fuck! Have you all picked a mountain for the ceiling yet? That Xuanji is a mad woman. No matter what we ask, she only screams to see General Pei and tells us nothing useful about the location of the green ghost Qirong. Feng Xin had never been good with women, and Xielian felt sorry that he was the one given the task of interrogation. General Pei Jr. replied, it doesn't matter even if they meet, she'll just become more insane. A voice came through. Another round of upside-down corpses. Qirong really is too crass. Disgusting. Even the ghost realm thinks he's vulgar. That means he truly is very much so. Words between the officials flew seamlessly around in their array, and it was clear that they were all on familiar terms with one another. As a newcomer who'd only just ascended again after an 800-year absence, Xielian should have laid low and remained silent, but after a while he couldn't resist and asked, everyone, what was with the upside-down corpses? Was Green Ghost Qirong in the area too? Xielian barely spoke in the communication array, so his voice was foreign to many, and the officials did not know whether to respond. Surprisingly enough, the first to answer him was Feng Xin. Green Ghost Qirong wasn't at Mount Yujin. However, the upside-down corpses were offerings Xuanji presented to him, as per his order. Xuanji is a subordinate of the Green Ghost, Xielian asked. Correct, General Pei Jr. replied. Xuanji passed away many hundreds of years ago. She held a grudge but was too powerless to stir up havoc until just over 100 years ago, when Green Ghost Qirong took a liking to her and took her under his wing. Only then did her spiritual powers improve by leaps and bounds. What he really meant was that the chaos Xuanji caused was not General Pei's fault, because she wasn't originally this strong. All blame should go to the Green Ghost Qirong instead, since he was the one who took her under his command and gave her the power to cause harm. Thinking of this, Xielian was suddenly reminded of another matter that had been on his mind all this time. He asked, "Speaking of which, I met a young man who can control silver butterflies at Mount Yujin. Does anyone know who he is?" The noisy communication array suddenly fell completely silent. Xielian was expecting this reaction, so he simply waited, patiently. A moment later, Ling Wen asked, "Your Highness, what did you say just now?" Mu Qing said coldly, "He just said that he met what?" Bro! Oh my god, shut the fuck up! Oh my god! Upon finally learning the name of that young man in red, Xielian felt his spirits lift inexplicably. He smiled. I'm sorry. His spirits lifted. Just because he got to learn it. Okay. Okay. He smiled. So he's called Hua Qiang. It's a fitting name for him.
Cut the show. I'm done.
The tone of Xielian's voice rendered all the officials even more speechless. Bro, imagine you're hearing this guy and he's like, "So, who's that guy that can control silver butterflies?" That's Hua Qiang. Wow, that's such a fitting name for him. And he smiled. Another moment passed before Ling Wen cleared her throat. Your Highness, have you ever heard of the 4 calamities? Much ashamed, I only know of the 4 famous tales, Xielian thought to himself. The so-called 4 famous tales refer to the extravagant stories of the deeds of 4 gods prior to their ascension. The young lord who poured wine, the prince who pleased God, the general who snapped his sword, and the princess who slit her throat. Of course, the prince who pleased God alluded to the awe-inspiring display of the crown prince of Shandle upon the grand avenue of divine might. Much ashamed, but I've never heard of them, Xielian said. Who are the 4 calamities? Please remember well, Your Highness, Ling Wen said. The 4 calamities are ship-sinking black water, night-touring green lantern, white-clothed calamity, and crimson rain-sought flower. Bitch! He has the coolest name. Crimson rain-sought flower. Bitch, everyone else go home. They are the 4 ghost kings of the ghost... Sorry, but damn, one of the ghost kings is in love with Xielian. God, this romance right here got me by the fucking throat. Humans become gods when they ascend, ghosts when they fall. God, they're so cool. The gods created heaven to reside in, drawing a clear boundary between themselves and mortals. They watched from above and ruled from beyond reach. The ghost realm, on the other hand, was not separated from the mortal realm. Monsters, demons, ghosts, and mortals all shared one earth. Some ghosts hid in the darkness, and some pretended to be humans as they walked among the people and roamed the mortal realm in disguise. Ling Wen continued. Ship-sinking black water refers to a water ghost. Although he has reached supreme status, he's fairly low-key and rarely starts trouble. Not many have seen him before, so we don't mind him for now. Night-touring green lantern refers to that vulgar, corpse-hanging green ghost Qirong. He's the only one in the 4 not yet a supreme. He is likely included because he's always causing trouble and is really quite annoying. Bro, or maybe because 4 names are easier to remember, so he's just there to pad the numbers. We'll skip him too. We're just gonna skip over this fucking guy. We're just gonna skip. White-clothed Calamity should be someone your highness is familiar with. He's also known as White No-Face. Hearing the name, Chevillon, who was sitting on the stone bridge, suddenly felt a stab of pain in his heart that spread all over his body. His hands began to shake, and he unconsciously clenched them into fists. Of course he was familiar. They say that when a supreme is born, it can destroy an entire nation and throw the world into chaos. The first country White No-Face destroyed was Xianle. Xianlian remained silent, and Ling Wen continued. In any case, White No-Face is already defeated. Even if he still exists somewhere in this world, it's now past his time in the limelight. Your Highness, the silver butterflies you saw at Mount Yuzhen are also called wraith butterflies. Their master is the last of the four, and one the world does not want to incur the wrath of. Crimson Rainsought Flower, Huaqiang, Crimson Rainsought Flower. Oh my god, shut the fuck up, bitch. Are you fucking kidding me? In the heavens, notorious was the word to describe the heavenly emperor and the crown prince of Xianle. Although the meaning of notoriety was completely different between the two, the word still resonated equally. However, in the ghost realm, there was only one worthy of being called notorious, and that was Huaqiang. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Literally a notorious ghost king, and he's fucking hot. If you wanted to learn about a god, simply walk into his temple and take a look at the way he was dressed and the weapons he wielded, and you'd more or less understand him. If you wanted to know more, simply listen to folktales, plays, and stories passed down by word of mouth. A god's mortal past and deeds were well documented. Ghosts, on the other hand, not so much. The kind of person they were while still alive and their appearance at present were all a mystery. The name Huaqiang, Flower City. Oh. The name Huaqiang was very obviously fake, and his appearance was most likely fake too. In the rumors, he was sometimes a twisted boy given to capricious mood changes, sometimes a gentle and mannered handsome young man, sometimes a gorgeous seductress with a venomous heart. Anything goes. Gosh, as for his true self, the only thing that one could be sure of was that he was dressed in red and often appeared alongside a bloodbath with silver butterflies flitting between his sleeves. And when it came to Huaqiang's backstory, there were endless different versions. Some say he was born without a right eye and was bullied and humiliated for it since birth, so he was filled with hatred for the world. Some say he was a young soldier who died in a lost battle for his country and later came to walk the earth in resentment. Some say he was a fool who was tormented by the death of his love. Some even say he was a monster. In the most outrageous version, supposedly, only supposedly, Huaqiang ascended and became a god, but immediately jumped back down on his own and became a ghost. But that version wasn't widespread. No one knew if it was true or false, and not many believed it. It had to be false, though. Even if it were true, it'd be a complete embarrassment for the heavens if someone ditched a heavenly official role to become a ghost. Honestly, that does not sound bad. That does not sound like a bad thing to do. Either way, the more diverse the stories were, the more mystery he was shrouded in. There were also many reasons for the gods to fear Huaqiang. For example, his behavior was unpredictable. Sometimes he would carry out a massacre in cold blood, and sometimes he would do odd acts of kindness. He also wielded a great deal of influence in the mortal realm and had legions of followers. That's right, mortals worshipped gods to ask for blessings and protection so that they could escape the evils from the ghost realm. And that was how the gods came to gain so many followers. Yet, Huaqiang, a ghost, had such a large following on Earth that he could influence the world single-handedly. You know what? That's true. I mean, he has much influence in our world too. I would do anything for this man. Here is a story that must be told. When Huaqiang first appeared, he did something notorious. He openly challenged 35 heavenly officials. The challenge was to spar with the martial gods and to debate with the civil gods. 33 of the 35 thought it hilarious, but were also infuriated enough to take up his challenge, thinking they could join forces to teach this little devil a thing or two. The first to step up to the plate were the martial gods. The martial gods were the strongest of the heavenly officials. Each had plenty of believers, and they were all powerful. In the face of a newborn ghost, it was a sure win. Yet unexpectedly, it turned out to be a complete annihilation after one battle. Even their weapons were completely smashed to pieces by Hua Qiang's freakish scimitar. It was only after the battle that they found out Hua Qiang was born of Mount Tonglu. Mount Tonglu was a volcano, and within its mountainous domain there was a city called Gu. The city of Gu wasn't a place where people cultivated poison, but rather the city itself was a great venom. Shut up! Wait! Every few hundred years, tens of thousands of ghosts descended upon the city of Gu to butcher one another until at last only one remained, and thus was the venom brewed. It usually ended in complete elimination, but those few who were capable enough to make it out alive would emerge as the devil incarnate. Only 2 such ghosts had ever made it out of the city of Gu in the past several centuries, and as expected, those 2 both became well-known ghost kings. Hua Qiang was one. Are you serious? I'm gonna keep asking, but they don't tell you this, right, in the show? What? What is going on here? What am I reading? After the defeat of the martial gods, it came time for the civil gods to rise to the challenge. Surely Hua Qiang could fight, but not debate. Unfortunately for the civil gods, they could not defeat him. Hua Qiang could recite the classics and debate the contemporaries. He was sometimes polite, sometimes vicious, sometimes unyielding, sometimes incisive, and sometimes quibbling. He was impenetrably sharp, his arguments flawless. He verbally abused the civil gods from top to bottom, past to present, and infuriated them so much that they puked blood and washed the skies red. Hua Qiang gained fame overnight. However, that alone wasn't enough to call him scary. What was scary was that after the challenge, Hua Qiang demanded all 33 officials make good on their word. Before the challenge, it was decided that if Hua Qiang were to lose, he would offer up his own ashes. If the officials were to lose, they must descend from the heavens and return to being mortals. If it weren't for his arrogant attitude and his decisive stake and the conviction of the 33 officials that they would not lose, they never would have accepted such terms. However, not a single heavenly official voluntarily honored the terms. It was humiliating to renege on their bet. But when they thought about it, if only one of them was defeated, it'd be an embarrassment. But if all of them were defeated and humiliated, then no one would lose face. They could even turn around and mock the other party. So they all came to a tacit understanding that they'd pretend nothing happened. Mortals were forgetful anyway. They would forget all about this in 50 years or so. They were not wrong about the mortals, but they were wrong about Hua Qiang. The gods refused to fulfill their promise. That was fine. He would give them a hand. Thus, Hua Qiang burned every single temple and shrine of all 33 gods. This was the stuff of nightmares for all the gods in the heavens, the red-clad ghosts burning of the 33 martial and civil gods' temples. That's my boy. That's my boy right there. What is that meme? Where's that? That's my baby and he's committed like atrocities. I think that's the meme. Temples and followers were the main source of power for heavenly officials. Where would followers go to pray if there were no temples? If they didn't pray, there wouldn't be merits. The massive loss of temples and merits greatly injured the heavens. To rebuild would take at least 100 years, and even then, they wouldn't be the same as before. This was a catastrophe greater than failing in transcending tribulations. The number of temples and shrines of those heavenly officials combined was at least in the tens of thousands, but Hua Qiang managed to burn them all in a single night. How? No one knew, but he did it. Pure madness. Yes, King, go off. Just show off everything you got, man. The gods cried foul to the heavenly emperor, but there was nothing he could do. The heavenly officials themselves accepted the challenge and the terms, and Hua Qiang was cunning enough to only destroy temples without hurting anyone. It was as if he dug a hole and asked the gods to jump, and the gods themselves dug the hole bigger and dove in. With the way things were, what more could they have done? At first, the 33 heavenly officials had wanted to show the world the defeat of this crazed little devil, so they broadcast the challenge into the dreams of many royals and nobles to display their strength and might before their most devout believers. But all the royals and nobles saw was their miserable defeat. When the mortals woke up, they switched from worshipping heavenly officials to worshipping that ghost. Damn! The heavenly officials who lost both their temples and believers soon grew weaker and weaker, until they were erased from existence. Are you fucking kidding me? It wasn't until a new wave of ascensions that those empty positions were filled again. He really fucking did that? Ever since then, the name Huaqiang was feared in the heavens. Even just hearing a mention of red robes or silver butterflies brought cold sweat to many. Some feared he would challenge them and burn their temples if they were to incur his displeasure. Some were blackmailed into silence and inaction because he had them by the balls, and some even oddly respected him because of how wide his reach was in the mortal realm. Sometimes, they even had to ask him for help paving the way for them while they carried out their duties. This went on for a long time, and many heavenly officials developed a peculiar sort of admiration for him. Thus, the heavens feared, hated, and respected this ghost king. Among the 35 gods who were challenged, the two who declined were General Xuanzhen, Mu Qing, General Nanyang, and Feng Xin. They thought the challenge was beneath them and didn't care to take it. Turned out, that was the right decision to make. But even then, Huaqiang hadn't forgotten about those two. Many Zongyuan festival patrols ended in fists and blood when both parties crossed paths with each other, and those crazy, maniacal silver butterflies left an everlasting impression on both men. Hearing this, Xielian thought of that fluttering silver butterfly that sparkled and danced adorably around him in delight. He couldn't picture it as described in the rumors. Was that little silver butterfly really that scary? Xielian wondered. It wasn't that bad. It was kind of cute. Shut the fuck up, bro. Please, shut up. I can't do this. I really can't. Stop. Just stop. Xielian, do you know what you're fucking saying, bro? I think he kind of likes you. Please. I want to see them interact. I want to see them. Clothes redder than maple, skin white as snow.
I can't.
You guys, I was gonna stop and I don't want to stop anymore. But I have to go to bed. Shit. I need to go to sleep. I will continue this in the morning. The
next day.
Okay, everyone. It is day 2 of Heaven Officials Blessing Volume 1. I actually have like a meeting in 1 hour, but I'm gonna just read. I'm just gonna wait for their phone call because I need more Huaqiang in my life. I need more history about him. They just gave us a whole breakdown of who this man is, supposedly. And I'm just like, I'm seated. I'm here. Of course, those were the words he would never say out loud. Oh, I forgot about that. I read this last night. Bro, it was kind of cute. Of course, those were words he would never say out loud. But no wonder Nanfeng and Fuyao's faces changed when they heard about the silver butterflies. They must have had a hard time at the hands of the silver butterfly's master, together with the 2 generals they served. Your Highness, did Huaqiang do anything to you? An official asked, as if Xielian should be missing an arm or a leg. He didn't really do anything, just... Xielian stopped, at a loss for words. Just what? He couldn't possibly say that Huaqiang just hijacked his sedan, held his hand, and strolled with him in the woods. Bro, please, that's exactly what you should say, okay? Stumped for a moment, Xielian finally said, he broke Xuanji's enchantment array at Mount Yujin and took me inside. The heavenly officials all grumbled inwardly, but remained in uneasy silence. After a while, an official finally asked, what do you think of all this? From the voice alone, Xielian could imagine how the various officials looked as they shook their heads and shrugged. Who knows? Completely no idea. No one knows what he wants. How scary. What on earth is he thinking? No one can read that Huaqiang. Although Huaqiang had been ubiquitously known as the devil incarnate, Xielian didn't think he was that scary. And all things considered, Xielian had Huaqiang to thank for his help in the northern case this time around. Either way, his first mission after Ascension was complete. It was predetermined that all merits from the northern case would be counted under Xielian's name, but that old lord official was so overwhelmed with grief over the death of his daughter that he didn't actually remember to fulfill the promises of his prayers until much later, and the merits were discounted because he did so mournfully. Yet somehow, with a little bit here, a little bit there, and a lot of oversight everywhere, Xielian was finally able to repay most of the 8,880,000 merits. Xielian was at last debt-free! Oh my god, I wish that were me. Feeling light with that weight off his shoulders, happy and high-spirited, Xielian decided he'd now focus on being a good god, and it would be great if he could become acquaintances or friends with other heavenly officials, even though I have someone who I think you could be very good friends with. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop. Even though the upper court communication array was generally peaceful, it would turn boisterous once things got busy. Sometimes, if an official was feeling good or had encountered something interesting, they'd share in the array and there'd be merriment. Although Xielian didn't recognize most of the voices, he would listen silently. But he couldn't always remain invisible. After a while, he'd randomly join the conversation. That really is quite interesting. I read this pleasant verse in passing and I thought I'd share with everyone. Here's an effective little cure for back and leg pains. Thought I'd share with everyone. Unfortunately, every time he'd share these mindfully selected, physically and mentally beneficial tips, the communication rate, literally, he's just trying to make friends. I hate these people. I hate these people. Finally, Ling Wen couldn't take it anymore and told him privately, "Your Highness, what you're sharing in the communication array is nice, but even those who are hundreds of years older than you wouldn't share those kinds of things." He's just talking, okay? I can relate to this so much. I'm so fucking awkward as a human being. I try and talk to people, but God, this hurts. This hurts reading. This hurts reading this. Xielian felt a little depressed. He wasn't even that old, so how did he end up becoming the senior among the heavenly officials who couldn't keep up with the trending topics of the youngsters? Stop! Literally me! Probably because he'd been away for too long and always lived a solitary life without a care for the outside world.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
What is this call out? Literally. Alas, it couldn't be helped, so whatever. He gave up and became less depressed. But there was another problem. There were still no new shrines built for him in the mortal realm. Maybe there were, but the heavens hadn't found them, so there weren't any records. Even old lords of the ground and soil had shrines. As a formerly ascended official, one of 3 times at that, having neither shrine nor temple nor followers was pretty awkward. But as awkward as it was only other heavenly officials feeling awkward for him. Xielian personally thought it wasn't that bad, and one day, on a whim, he suddenly thought, if no one worships me, I'll worship myself. How does that thing go? If Xielian has 1,000,000 fans, I'm one of them. If he has 10 fans, I'm one of them. If he has 0 fans, I'm dead. Literally. None of the heavenly officials knew how to respond to that. Who had ever fucking heard of a god worshipping himself? To reach such tragic heights, what was the Really? What's so bad about loving yourself, huh? What is so bad? However, Xielian was used to receiving nothing but awkward silence the moment he spoke and thought amusing himself could be fun. Once he made up his mind, he jumped back down to the mortal realm. This time, he landed in a small village in the mountains. It was known as Puchi, named for the water chestnut. Rather than a village, it was more like a hillside hamlet. With green trees and clear waters, it was a pleasant country landscape with continuous stretches of rice paddies. With such beautiful scenery, Xielian thought he'd landed in a really good place this time. When he looked further, he saw there was a small, dilapidated shack on a hill, and upon asking around, the villagers told him, "That house is decrepit. There's no owner, and vagrants sleep at night in there every once in a while, so you can go make yourself at home." Well, wasn't that just perfect for him? Xielian walked toward the shack. As Xielian walked closer, he realized that the shack looked decrepit from afar, but on closer inspection, it was literally crumbling. 2 of the 4 columns that held up the rectangle-shaped shack were probably rotted through. When the wind blew, the entire shack would shake and creak, possibly ready to collapse at any time, but it was still within Xielian's range of acceptable. He went in for a look and began to tidy up the place. The villagers were quite surprised to see that someone was actually going to settle in that shack, and all came to check Xielian out. They gave Xielian a huge, warm welcome. Not only did they donate a broom to help with cleaning and watch as he swept until he was covered in dust, they even gave him a basket of freshly picked water chestnuts. Aw, that's so cute! With their skin peeled off, the water chestnuts were white and crisp, fresh and juicy. Xielian squatted on the doorstep and ate them. He then put his hands together, and feeling thankful for this blessing, he decided to call this place Puchi Shrine. Xielian busied himself with cleaning this and that, and the onlooking villagers soon realized that this young man was building a shrine of sorts. Curiosity overtook them, and they questioned, "Which god are you going to worship?" Xielian cleared his throat and said, "Yes, this shrine will be for the Prince of Xianle." Everyone's face went blank. "Who's that?" Xielian replied, I don't know either. He's a prince, I think." "Oh, what does he do?" "Probably watches over you and keeps you safe." While collecting scraps and passing, the villagers asked excitedly, "Then, does this prince oversee the blessing of the wealth?" "It'd already be pretty good if you don't get blessed into debt," Xielian thought to himself and gently replied, "I'm afraid not." The crowd started throwing suggestions at him. "Why not worship the water master? For wealth. It'll bring in good money for the temple." "What about Ling Wen's and Jun? Then maybe our village will produce a scholar." A girl shyly offered, what about... Shut up! Shut up! He's never gonna live this down. He's never gonna live this down. Xielian maintained a smile. "What about General Zhu? If Xielian really built a Zhu shrine, Feng Xin would probably shoot him dead on the spot with an arrow." After roughly tidying his shrine, all that was left that Xielian needed were an incense burner, some fortune shakers, and other miscellaneous sundries. But Xielian forgot the most important thing, the statue of a god. He carried his bamboo hat on his back and stepped out the door. Oh yeah, there was no door either. He pondered for a moment. This shack definitely had to be repaired. And so Xielian wrote and put a sign out front. "Please kindly donate to the renovation of this broken shrine for the accumulation of good merits." Xielian left, walked for 3 to 4 kilometers, and entered town. To do what? To get a life, of course. So he went to do what he did best. In fairy tales, gods didn't need to eat, but in truth, it was hard to say. The Almighty could certainly extract and absorb the necessary spiritual energy directly from sunshine and rain dew, but the problem was, it wasn't a matter of ability, but rather, why would you? Some gods, due to their cultivation methods, required clean internal organs and could not even touch a drop of mortal grease. Really? Oh, okay, well I didn't know that, okay? If they were to ingest mortal sustenance, it would be as if they had been struck with food poisoning and they would get What? Are you serious? Thus, they would only ingest cleanly grown spiritual fruits or magical beasts that had life-prolonging and power-strengthening effects. Wow. Well, I didn't know that. Xielian didn't have those problems. With the curse collar on, he was no different than a mortal. He could eat anything, and through experience, nothing he ate could kill him either. Even if it was a bun that had been set aside for a month, or a cake that had gone moldy, he could eat it all without harm. Oh man, no. This is giving me such terrible flashbacks. No. With such a body, he could pretty much get by just collecting scraps. To compare them, building a shrine cost him money, while collecting scraps made him money. So ultimately, truly, collecting scraps was better than ascension. Xielian had the looks and grace of a saint, so he had the upper hand when collecting scraps, and it took him almost no time to collect a giant bag. On the way back, he saw an old ox cart that was piled high with hay. The cart looked like one he'd seen before in Puchi village, so it should be going the same way. He asked for a ride, and the cart driver tilted his chin to signal for him to get on. Carrying his big bundle of junk, Xielian climbed on to take a seat. It was only when he settled down that he realized there was someone else lying on the other side of the tall stack of hay.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Stay calm!
Fuck! Yes, bitch! Yes! This person, whose upper body was hidden behind the hay, had his left leg crossed over his right. It appeared he was lying there with his arms pillowed behind his head, taking a rest. He looked so carefree and at ease that it made Shelion a little envious. That tight pair of black boots on a pair of long legs was a sight pleasing to the eyes.
Could you excuse me?
Shut up! Oh my god! Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! Oh my god, look! It reminded Shelion of a different pair that walked with him at Mount Eugen. Shelion could not help but sneak several more looks to confirm that there were no silver chains on those boots, which seemed to be made of animal pelt. This is probably a young master coming out to play, he thought. Shelion pushed back his bamboo hat and took out a scroll to read. He didn't really care for worldly affairs, but after having created too many awkward situations, he figured he'd better do some studying. The cart rattled and time passed. Looking up, they were traversing a maple grove, a sea of flaming red in a field of green. The rustic charm of the mountainous countryside, with fresh grass that refreshed the mind, was extremely intoxicating. But Shelion could not help but be slightly taken aback. A long time ago, in his youth, when he cultivated at the Royal Holy Temple, the entire mountain of maple was like this, shimmering like gold, intense like fire. The unforgettable sight before him now inevitably took him on a trip down memory lane. Shelion watched for a long time before looking down at the scroll. The first few lines on the scroll were thus: The Prince of Xianle ascended thrice, as a martial god, a misfortune god, a rubbish god. Well, alright, Shelion said out loud. If you think about it, a martial god is no different than a rubbish god. All gods are equal. All beings are equal. A snicker came from behind and a voice said, Is that right? Oh, shit! He just said 3 words, you guys. I can't. Oh my god. The youth on the other side of the cart lazily continued in a drawl. People naturally love saying that all gods are equal and all beings are equal. But if that were true, then pretty much all those different gods wouldn't exist. Shelion looked at the boy, who was still lying there idly without showing any intention of getting up. He had likely interrupted out of boredom. You're probably right, Shelion said and smiled. Shelion returned to his scroll and continued reading. Further down the line read, Many believe that, as the god of misfortune, any paintings or writings of the Prince of Xianle have the power of a curse. If placed on the back of a person or on the main entrance of a household, then the cursed person or household will run into all sorts of bad luck. It was hard to tell whether this was a description of a god or a ghost. Shelion shook his head. He couldn't bear to read any more about himself. It was probably better to read about other prominent gods of today, so he wouldn't be discourteous if he ran into them and ended up not being able to tell them apart. A villager had mentioned the Water Master earlier, so Shelion— Wait. Water! Wind? God, I'm slow. Oh my god. A villager had mentioned the Water Master earlier, so Shelion moved on to find the description of the Water Master. The Water Master Wudu controls water and simultaneously wealth. Most merchants have a Water Master shrine in their stores and homes to guarantee their wealth. Shelion thought this was strange. Why would a god of water control wealth? The youth behind the hay responded. When merchants transport goods, their cargo is mainly sent on the waterways, so they always go to the Water Master Temple and light up a tall incense to pray for a safe journey, promising this or that when they return. After a while, the Water Master gradually came to control wealth. The youth was actually answering his questions specially for him. Shelion turned around. Really? Interesting. The Water Master must be a very powerful major god then. The youth sneered. Yeah, he's the water tyrant after all. Judging by tone, Shelion didn't think the boy took that particular heavenly official all that seriously. It didn't sound like he was complimenting him either. What's the water tyrant? The youth replied leisurely. When a ship travels down a major river, it all depends on him whether the ship can set sail. No offerings means capsizing. Pretty tyrannical. So that's how he received the nickname. Kind of like General Zhu Yang in The Sweeping General. Famous gods usually had a nickname or two between all the realms. For example, Shelion was known as the laughingstock of the 3 realms, the infamous freak, the jinx, the loser, etc. Usually, it was fairly disrespectful to use those nicknames on heavenly officials. Like if anyone were to call Mu Qing the sweeping general, he'd surely fly into a rage. Xielian made a note to himself on what not to call the Watermaster and said, "I see. Thanks so much for enlightening me." He paused briefly and, thinking this youth to be a rather intriguing conversationalist, he continued, "My friend, you look young, but you know a lot." Oh, no! Shut up! That is so cute! Bitch, are you fucking kidding me? Look! Look at how smug this motherfucker looks. Bro, he is so fine! My god. Oh my god, that is so fucking cute. The youth replied, "Nah, I'm just bored. I read whatever when I'm free. That's all." In the mortal realm, it was easy to find books on lore that spoke of the stories of gods and ghosts, the subjects ranging from their kindness and grudges to trivialities. Some were real and some fake. It wasn't odd that the youth knew so much. Xielian put down his scroll. "Then, my friend, you know about gods, but do you know about ghosts too?" "Which ghost?" the youth asked. Xielian replied, "Crimson rain-sought flower, Hua Qiang." Oh, bro, you. The youth chuckled and finally sat up when he heard that name. He turned around and Xielian's eyes suddenly lit up. The youth was about 16 or 17 years old. His tunic was redder than maple leaves, and his skin was white like snow. With eyes as bright as stars, he looked askance at him with a smile. He was exceptionally handsome, but there was an inexplicable hint of wildness in his looks. His hair was tied in a loose ponytail, crooked and carefree. The cart was driving through the forest of flaming red maples, where maple leaves danced their way to the ground. A leaf playfully landed on the shoulder of the youth, and he blew it off softly, then looked up at Xielian, speaking with a shadow of a smile. "What do you want to know? Ask away." Shut up! Shut up! Stop! I can't. Okay, the RIZZ from the show, from the book. No. Yeah, it's working. It's working here too, y'all. He looked teasing, yet somehow possessed the perfect composure of omniscience. Though he sounded youthful, his voice was deeper than was typical for his age and was pleasant to the ears. Sitting upright on the cart, it was definitely pleasant to the— Have you heard him? Bro. Sitting upright on the cart, Xielian watched him thoughtfully for a moment, then said, "Crimson rain-sought flower evokes quite the imagery. Do you know where it came from, my friend?" Out of respect, Xielian didn't say, "My little friend." The youth sat up casually, propped an arm up on a raised knee, and fixed his sleeves. He replied, unconcerned, "Nothing major, really. Just that there was once an incident where he cleaned out the nest of another ghost, and a shower of blood rain poured down from the skies. He saw a flower was getting battered by the bloody rain, so he tilted his umbrella and shielded it." Xielian pictured it in his head, imagining such an act of elegance under the rancid shower. He then thought about the burning of those 33 temples and laughed. "Does Hua Qiang pick fights often?" The youth answered, "Not often. Depends on his mood." "What was he like before his death?" Xielian asked. "Definitely not a good person," the youth replied. "What does he look like?" The youth raised his eyes to look at him when he heard the question, tilted his head, and stood up before sitting down next to Xielian. "What do you think he looks like?" Stop! Stop! What are you doing? He turned the question on Xielian. Seeing the youth up close, Xielian thought he was too handsome for words. Okay. But his beauty was deadly like a sword, sharp and mesmerizing, making it hard to stare head on. Xielian only met his eyes for a moment, then lowered his eyes in defeat. He turned his head slightly and continued to ask, "If Hua Qiang is a big-shot ghost, I'm sure he has many forms and changes often." The youth arched his brows at Xielian, turning away and replied, Yeah, but there are still times when he would use his real face. Of course, we're talking about his true form. It might have been his imagination, but Xielian thought the distance between the two of them seemed to be a little wide, so he turned his face back around. Then, I feel his true form is probably a youth, like you. The youth lifted his lips slightly. Why do you say that? Xielian replied, no reason. You say whatever and I think whatever. Everything is whatever. That's all. The youth laughed. Who knows? But he's blind in one eye. He pointed to his right eye. This one. That was nothing outrageous. Xielian recalled one of the many backstory versions where Hua Qiang wore a black eye patch to hide that missing eye, and asked, do you know what happened to his eye? That's a question everyone wants the answer to, the youth replied. Others asked because they wanted to know what Hua Qiang's weakness was, but Xielian asked purely out of curiosity. He didn't say anything, and the youth continued. He dug it out himself. Xielian was taken aback. Why? A moment of madness, the youth answered. He could dig out his own eye when struck by madness. Xielian was now more curious than ever about this Crimson Ghost King. It couldn't have been something as simple as a moment of madness, but there were probably no more details about that story. Xielian pressed on. Does Hua Qiang have any kind of weakness? He wasn't expecting the youth to have the answer. It was just a casual question. If Hua Qiang's weakness was so easily known, then whatever the rumored weakness was couldn't possibly be true. But the youth answered immediately. His ashes. If one got a hold of a ghost's ashes, one could take command of said ghost. If the ghost disobeyed, then by getting rid of the ashes, the ghost would dissolve and its soul disintegrate. This was common knowledge, but using it on Hua Qiang seemed fruitless. Xielian smiled. There's probably no one who can obtain his ashes, so that weakness is the same as having no weakness. You never know, the youth said. There are circumstances where a ghost would voluntarily give away his ashes. You guys, like how I look like right now is like this right here. This is how I look like when they're talking to each other. Hold on. There are circumstances where a ghost would voluntarily give away his ashes. Like the bet he had with those 33 heavenly officials? Yeah, right, the youth scoffed. He didn't need to say the words for Xielian to understand that he meant there was no way Hua Qiang would have lost. He continued, there's a custom in the ghost realm, where if a ghost has a special someone, they entrust their ashes to that— Oh my god. Shut up. Shut up! No, I'm not. Don't shut up. Bae, don't. That was akin to handing over one's life to another person. Such passion. What a charming tale that would be. Xielian commented, interested. I didn't know the ghost realm had such romantic practice. They do, the youth said, but not many dare to practice it. Xielian thought as much. It wasn't only ghosts who deceived humans. There were humans who deceived ghosts too. There must be endless tales of manipulation and betrayal. Xielian sighed. It certainly is painful to think about. To have given everything for love and lose everything in return. The youth laughed out loud. What's there to be afraid of? If it were me, I'd have no regrets giving away my ashes. Who cares if they want me to disintegrate or just scatter the ashes for fun? Bitch! Get! Oh my god. My standards are they're just like, whoa! They're just super high, man. Xielian grinned, then suddenly realized that they still didn't know each other's names despite having chatted for so long. My friend, what's your name? The youth raised one hand over his forehead to block out the rays of the blood-red sunset and squinted his eyes as if loathing the sun. Me? I'm third in my family. They call me Sanlang. Okay, Sanlang means third youth. It is common for peasants to name their children in numbers, while those of higher status would use the same naming conventions for familiar nicknames. Lang means man, but also becomes a term of endearment when attached to a name. It is used by women to address their husbands or lovers akin to— I mean, I already knew this, but reading it again. Oh my gosh. He didn't say his full name, and it wasn't Xielian's place to ask. My family is Xie. Given name is Lian. Are you heading to Puchi village too? Sanlang lay back into the hay, put his arms behind his head, and crossed his legs. Dunno. I've no destination in mind. It sounded as if there was a story to his words, so Xielian gently asked, What's the matter? Sanlang sighed. My parents were quarreling and kicked me out. I walked for a long time but had nowhere to go. I almost passed out from hunger on the streets before finding somewhere at random to lie down. The clothes on the boy's back looked casual, but the material was of high quality. With the knowledgeable way he spoke and how carefree he appeared, Shelion had long since thought he was a boy from a wealthy family. It must be quite difficult for a respectable young man to wander so long on his own. Shelion understood that feeling. Hearing he was hungry, Shelion searched through his sack but only found a small steamed bun. Good thing it hadn't turned hard yet. Want it? The youth nodded, and Shelion gave him the bun. Sanlang took a look at Shelion. What about you? I'm all right. I'm not hungry yet, Shelion replied. Stop! Sanlang pushed the bun back. Then I'm all right too. Shelion looked at him, then split the bun in half and gave him half. You can have half, and I'll have the other half. Seeing this, Sanlang accepted the steamed bun and started munching. Watching him sit and eat a simple bun obediently, Shelion felt like he was abusing the boy. The ox cart drove slowly over the rugged hills as the sun gradually set and the two chatted in the back. The more they spoke, the more Shelion thought Sanlang to be an extraordinary youth. At such a young age, his diction and behavior were already mature and intelligent, calm and collected, as if there was nothing in this world he didn't know and nothing could stump him. Shelion thought he was wise beyond his years, but sometimes he would still reveal the folly of youth. Shelion said he was the shrine master of Puchi Shrine, and Sanlang asked, Puchi Shrine? Sounds like there are plenty of water chestnuts to eat. I like them. Which god is it for? Having been asked that troublesome question again, Shelion cleared his throat and said, The Prince of Shanle. You probably don't know him. The youth smiled, but before he could say anything, the ox cart suddenly shook violently. The two jerked with the cart and Shelion reached to grab Sanlang, fearing he might fall. But just when his hand touched Sanlang, the youth shook off his hand as if burned. There was only a slight change in his expression, but Shelion saw it and thought, maybe this boy actually disliked him? They'd had such a good time chatting all this way, though, hadn't they? But now wasn't the time to ponder. Shelion stood up and looked around. What's going on? The old driver responded. I don't know. Old Huang, why aren't you moving? Go on now. The sun had set. The ox cart was still deep in the woods, now filled with darkness. Old Huang the ox just stood there, stubbornly refusing to move no matter how the old driver urged it. It kept mooing, wanting to dig its head into the earth, and flicking its tail like a whip. This didn't feel right. Shelion was about to jump off the cart when suddenly the old driver pointed straight ahead and screamed. Farther up the road, a number of hovering balls of green flames were popping up here and there. They were gathered and burned, floating through the woods. A group of white-clad figures slowly made their way toward them, carrying their own severed heads. Oh shit. Seeing this, Shelion cried, Protect! Roye flew out from his sleeve and wrapped itself in a circle around the ox cart from above, protecting the three, plus the one beast. Shelion turned back and demanded, What day is it today? The old driver didn't respond before the youth spoke up from behind. It's Zongyuan, the middle of the 7th month, when the gates to the underworld opened. He didn't check his calendar before coming out today, and it just happened to be the Zongyuan festival. Shelion's voice dropped. Stay close to me. We've run into evil tonight. If we go down the wrong path at the fork, we'll never return. The figures were dressed in white prisoner garb and had no heads. It appeared they were newly executed criminals, and every one of them held a head in their hands. They wobbled slowly toward the ox cart as their heads buzzed in those bony arms. Shelion instructed the other two on the cart in a low voice. In a moment, when they approach, do not make a sound. Sanlang tilted his head. Guga, I can't believe you're a man with superpowers. He sounded greatly interested, and Shelion replied, Not really superpowers. I only know a few tricks. They can't see us now, but it's hard to say whether they will when they get close. That old cart driver's eyes were already wide with fear after seeing the flight of the silk cloth, and now that there were headless walkers, his eyes were about to roll back in terror. He shook his head repeatedly. No, I don't think I can hold my voice in. Dao Zhang, what should I do? Then there's another way. I apologize in advance. Shelion swiftly hung his hand and tapped a point on the old man's back, and instantly the man slumped and passed out. Xielian caught himself lightly and laid him down flat on the ox cart, while he himself assumed the driver's seat. Suddenly, he sensed a strange movement behind him, and when he turned back to look, he saw the youth had followed after him and settled right behind him. Xielian asked, "Are you all right?" Sanlang propped up his chin. "Of course not. I'm scared." Oh, gosh. Although there wasn't a single trace of fright detectable in his voice, Xielian still comforted him. "Don't be scared. You're behind me. Nothing will harm you." Stop. I can't do this anymore. I literally don't. I don't have the emotional capacity to deal with these two. The youth smiled, not saying a word. Xielian suddenly realized the youth was staring at him. Then, quickly, it dawned on him that what this youth was staring at was actually the cursed shackle around his neck. This cursed shackle was like a black collar bound to his neck, completely unconcealable. It could easily cause one to assume the worst. Xielian pulled at his collar lightly, even though it couldn't hide anything. The skies had darkened, and that youth's expression could no longer be seen. Xielian picked up the reins to gently urge the ox onward. Oh, I'm losing my voice. Xielian finally soothed the ox, and the cart silently passed by this band of headless criminal ghosts. Listening to the heads' banter, Xielian thought them rather hilarious. They were full of petty woes. 15th day of the 7th month was the Zongyuan festival, the biggest festival for the ghost realm. On that day, the gates to the underworld opened, and all manner of spirits, ghosts, monsters, and demons swarmed out to celebrate with abandon. Mortals needed to avoid them at all costs. And especially on a night like this, it was best to stay home with every door and window shut. But Xielian had always had rotten luck. He could drink only water, and the water would get stuck between his teeth, and he could be wearing holy repellent gear and ghosts would appear, like was happening now. Ghost fires flared all around them, and several were chasing after the fires, and some dressed in funeral garb were expressionally mumbling to themselves in front of a circle, trying to catch the offerings and joss paper money burned for the afterlife by mortals. A scene like this certainly epitomized the word pandemonium. Xielian crossed through the middle, thinking that from now on he must pay more attention to the calendar when going out. Suddenly, a screech that sounded like a chicken being butchered rang out. "Oh no, oh no! Ghosts are being murdered!" This scream made all the ghosts anxious. Where are they murdering ghosts?" The ghost that screeched answered, "I'm scared out of my wits! I found so many shattered ghost fires over there and they were all brutally crushed. What hostility! All shattered? Then they're truly broken beyond saving. That really is too much. Who did it? Could it be... Have we been infiltrated by monks and cultivators?" That band of headless people started shouting. "Ah! Now that you mention it, weren't we just blocked by something on the road with no way of passing? Could that have been... Where? Right there!" Xielian cried, "Oh no!" mentally. The next second, a large group of nefarious beings surrounded the ox cart, each of their faces savage. They threatened maliciously. "I smell the steaming scent of the living." They couldn't hide any longer. It was already unreasonable for a live human to crash in on a band of ghosts on Zongyuan Festival. If Xielian actually wanted to fight such a large mob of creatures, he urged the cart onward and shouted, "Go!" The ox was terrified and was already stomping its hooves anxiously while it stood. Once it heard the shout, it didn't need to be ordered twice before it pulled the cart into a mad dash. Xielian was gripping onto the reins with one hand as his other hand fumbled out a large handful of paper talismans and threw them to the ground. Hinder. Those were stumbling talismans, excellent tools for escaping. A series of small rumbling noises could be heard. With every rumble, an obstacle was set up for that band of ghosts. It would stall them for a short time, but only a short one. Despite using up so many talismans, it wouldn't even be half an incense time before they caught up. Xielian was driving the cart down the mountain path in an escape like his rear was on fire when he suddenly called out, "Stop!" Turns out that old ox had pulled the cart to a fork in the road. Xielian saw there were 2 pitch-black mountain paths ahead and immediately pulled on the reins. Now he had to be extra careful here. On the night of Zongyuan Festival, sometimes when people strolled, they might discover a road that had never existed before. Such a road should never be taken, because if they walked the wrong one, they would enter the ghost realm and never return. Xielian had only just arrived in the area and didn't know which path was the right one to take. Then he remembered that, besides the large bag of junk he'd collected, he'd also purchased some miscellaneous items, including a fortune shaker. So he thought, why not shake out a fortune to decide? Thus he fumbled for the fortune shaker and shook it in his hands with a clattering sound, mumbling as he shook, "By the heaven official's blessing, no paths are bound. The great road leads to heaven, one to each side. May we go our separate ways. The first stick left, the second stick right. We'll take the path with the best fortune." Just as the words left his lips, clack, clack, 2 sticks fell out of the shaker. But when he picked them up and looked, he fell silent. The worst of bad luck. Both sticks were the worst of bad luck. Both roads were perilous. So didn't this mean they were going to die no matter what? Xie felt a little exasperated and shook the shaker furiously once more with both hands. "Dear fortune shaker, this is our first meeting. Why are you so heartless? I'm going to try again. Please let me save face this time." Click, clack. 2 sticks again, and when he picked them up, they were both still the worst of bad luck. Universe, give this guy a break, please. Jeez Louise. "Let me try," San Lang spoke up suddenly. It couldn't go any worse than this, so Xie passed the fortune shaker over. San Lang received it with a single hand and casually gave it a shake. Out fell 2 fortune sticks, and he picked them up and handed them to Xie without even so much as a glance. Xie gave them a look, and they were both, amazingly, the best of good luck. He couldn't help but be awed. Since he first reached such a state of misery, it seemed that oftentimes those around him would also have their fortunes affected by his crummy luck. Who knew if that was actually true? But either way, it was a complaint he'd heard frequently. Yet this youth wasn't affected in the least if a casual shake could let him shake out 2 of the best of fortunes. Since both fortune sticks showed the best of good luck, Xie picked a path randomly and drove the cart as he praised sincerely. "My friend, your luck is really quite good." San Lang casually tossed the fortune shaker in the back and smiled. "Really? I think my luck is pretty good too. It's always been so." Having heard him say, "It's always been so," Xie thought that the difference between people truly was as great as heaven and earth. After running for a while, wails and hollers could suddenly be heard from all around. "Caught him! He's here! Everyone come here! That damn cultivator is here!" Ghost head after ghost head popped out. Xie spoke up. I can't believe we still picked the wrong path." The effect of the stumbling talismans was over. They were still surrounded after all. There were at least 100 in this mob of nefarious beings surrounding them in wave after wave, and the numbers were still increasing. Xie really didn't know why there were so many inhuman creatures gathered here, but there wasn't any time to wonder. Xie said warmly, "It wasn't my intent to disturb everyone. I pray you will show us mercy." A headless ghost spoke up. "Stinkin' cultivator, why didn't you show mercy first? The one who broke and dispersed a bunch of ghost fires over there was you, wasn't it?" Xie replied innocently. "It wasn't us. Truth be told, I'm but a lowly scrap collector." "Damn cultivator, you! The band of ghosts who were roaring with mockery suddenly stopped in their tracks. Xie wondered aloud. "What about me?" He might have asked a question, but they weren't just stopped in their tracks now. They all stared at Xie as if they were seeing something exceedingly terrifying. Their mouths were either gaping open or shut tight, and a number of the heads held in the felon's hands were even dropped onto the ground. Xie ventured again. "Everyone? Are you all?" Yet unexpectedly, before he finished his question, the band of ghosts all fled the scene, like the wind blowing away remnants of clouds. Literally sunlight behind him, giving off like this threatening aura. Xie was baffled. What the? He hadn't even taken out that bundle of talismans he clutched in his hand inside his sleeve yet, and he was found out? Were they really that sharp? And they weren't even particularly powerful talismans. Xie felt incredulous. Was it really him they saw, or something behind him? Having thought this, he turned his head back and looked behind him. But there was only the passed-out ox cart owner and that carefree, red-clad youth who was still propping up his cheek. He's like, "Tee, it wasn't me. I'm just an innocent bystander." Seeing him look over, San Lang smiled and dropped his hand. "Daozang, you're amazing. You scared all those ghosts away." "Oh my god." Xie smiled back. "Really? I didn't realize I was actually this amazing." Oh my god. Then he pulled at the reins a couple of times, and the wheels of the ox cart began to roll slowly once more. The road after that was smooth, and it wasn't even an hour before the ox cart slowly pulled out of the forest and came to an open mountain path. Down below the hills, the warm glow of lights illuminated Pucci village. That really was the path of the best luck, with a close call but no actual danger. A night breeze brushed by, and Xielian turned his head back once more. Sanlang seemed to be in a very good mood and had lain down, watching the moon with his hands pillowed behind his head. Beneath the faint moonlight, the youth's complexion looked surreal. After a moment of hesitation, Xielian smiled. "My friend, what is it?" Sanlang replied. Oh my god, what? Don't talk to me! Don't look at me! Don't even talk to me, Huaqiang! Don't say anything! You're going to make me flustered! Have you ever had your fortune told? Xielian asked. No, Sanlang replied, turning to face Xielian. Do you want me to give you a session?
We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused.
Sanlang looked at him and smiled. Do you want to give me a session? Jesus Christ. Stop it, you two, making me freaking flustered. A little bit, Xielian said. Sanlang gave a slight nod. Sure. He sat up, his body leaning slightly towards Xielian. How do you want to read my fortune? How about palm reading? Xielian suggested. Hearing this, the corners of Sanlang's lips curled. It was hard to tell what that smile meant, but he only replied with, sure. Then he extended his left hand to Xielian. This left hand was long and shapely, clean and elegant. A beautiful hand. It wasn't a soft and meek kind of beauty, rather, there was strength hidden beneath the muscles. It was a hand that one wouldn't want to have choking their
What did he say?
You know what? Now that's where he's wrong. That's where he's wrong, you guys. You know? It was a hand that one wouldn't want to have choking their I'm sorry. Let's move on. Xielian was careful not to touch Sanlang due to the slight change in the latter's expression the last time they touched, so he simply looked down to study the hand up close. The moon above was bright, but not too bright. Even in the midst of night, it wasn't too dark. Xielian thoroughly scrutinized the hand before him as the ox cart languidly climbed the hills. The wheels and the wooden shafts creaked as they rolled. So? Sanlang asked. Xielian took his time, then slowly said, You've got a good hand. Don't even ask me what my thoughts are right now. Oh yeah? How so? This man needs to shush. This man needs to shush. Please. Xielian raised his head and said warmly, You have a strong character, extremely stubborn, but whenever you run into obstacles, you remain true to yourself and manage to transform the bad to good. You have a limitless well of good fortune, my friend. Your future is bright and full of success. All of that was complete bullshit, made up on the spot. Xielian had never learned palmistry. Once upon a time, when he was still banished, he often regretted not learning palmistry or face reading from the state preceptors at the Royal Holy Temple. If he had such skills, then earning pennies on the streets wouldn't have been so hard, and he wouldn't have to busk or shatter boulders on his chest. What he really wanted to see wasn't the fortune of this youth, but rather whether his hands had fingerprints and palm prints. Normal ghosts and monsters could fabricate fake bodies and pretend to be human, but their craft was rough and often overlooked minute details, such as fingerprints and palm prints. However, the body of this youth appeared altogether normal, with clear palm prints, and there was no sign of magic undulation around him. If he was a ghost in disguise, then he had to be of a caliber greater than Narath to create such a flawless disguise. But why would a ghost king of special status spend his time traveling with Xielian on an ox cart to visit Pucci village? I know one ghost who'd love to go on a date with you, babe. Just as heavenly officials were always busily working like machines, ghost kings should have their hands full too. Okay. Xielian pretended to be confident in his fortune telling and sweated through his bold-faced lies until he couldn't come up with anything else. Sanlang watched him unblinkingly the whole time, sitting through his nonsense with an intrigued smile, chuckling under his breath. Got any more? Sanlang asked. No way. What more did he want Xielian to make up? Is there something else you want me to look at? This is so intimate, bro. Oh my god! Don't fortune tellers always talk about love and marriage? Sanlang asked. Xielian cleared his throat and replied solemnly, to be honest, I'm actually not that great at fortune telling, so I don't know how to predict relationships, but I don't imagine you have anything to worry about. Ah! Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up!
These gays, they're trying to murder me.
Oh my god, they're flirting! Oh my god, dude, they're
flirting.
flirting! I shouldn't even be here right now. I shouldn't be intruding on this. I should leave. Oh my god. Sanlang arched his brows. Why do you say that? Xielian grinned. There must be tons of girls with crushes on you. And why do you suppose so many girls must like me? Sanlang? Oh my god, I can't read this. I can't read this. I can't. It's physically impossible for me to read this. Oh my god. Xielian was about to go with the flow and answer before he realized that this kid was manipulating him into praising him. Helpless and amused, Xielian didn't know what to say and rubbed his forehead. Sanlang. This was the first time Xielian ever called Sanlang by name, and the youth laughed in delight, letting Xielian off the hook.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
Fuck me. Bro, I can't. The ox cart had finally laboriously pulled into the village, and Xielian turned around and hurriedly got off the cart with his hand lightly supporting his forehead. Sanlang followed behind and jumped off. Xielian finally looked up and realized that Sanlang was actually a head taller than him. It wasn't obvious when the youth was lazily lying in the hay, but standing tall, the two couldn't see eye to eye on even... We're done! We're done here! We're done! You... Shit. Don't do this to me with the height difference. Don't point it out like that, bro. Don't. This is killing me, man. This is literally... Sanlang stood before the cart and stretched, and Xielian asked, Sanlang, where will you go now? Don't know. Maybe sleep on the streets. Or a cave will do, Sanlang sighed. That won't do, Xielian said, concerned. Sanlang shrugged. Can't be helped. I've got no place to go. Then he grinned. Thanks for telling my fortune. I'll rely on your good words. See you later. Xielian sweated in embarrassment at the mention of his fortune telling. You gotta say this normally. You gotta read this like a normal person. Seeing that the youth turned to leave, he quickly called after him. Wait, why don't you come to my shrine? If you don't mind. Sanlang stopped in his tracks and turned halfway around. Is that okay? Xielian explained. The place wasn't originally mine. I'm so sorry, I'm trying to read this, but you can hear me smiling as I literally just like have like a smile from ear to ear right now. I cannot read. I'm just so... I've been waiting for their interactions throughout these readings. I've just been waiting for this. Whew. Xielian explained. The place wasn't originally mine anyway, and I heard it housed a number of passers-by before, but it's probably much shabbier than what you're used to. I'm afraid you wouldn't be comfortable. If this youth really was a runaway young master, Xielian couldn't possibly let him run around the streets aimlessly. He strongly suspected that half a steamed bun was the only thing Sanlang had eaten all day today, and youth or not, he would collapse somewhere if he kept that up. Hearing Xielian, Sanlang turned fully around and said nothing, but walked up close to Xielian and leaned forward. He leaned forward. Xielian didn't understand what he was up to, only that the distance between them had closed too fast. He suddenly didn't know what to do. Then the youth straightened back up, lifting the giant bag of junk Xielian had brought back in his hand. He said, then let's go. Bro, you didn't need to be that fucking close, but okay. I see what you're doing. I see you. You're not slick. I'm here watching you. I know what you're up to. Xielian blanked on the spot. He watched as the tall and slender youth walked away with his giant bag of junk as if it were the most natural thing in the world to do, and it made him mutter inwardly, forgive my sins. Sanlang strode a few steps out and started walking. Xielian was about to follow him, but he remembered at the last second that the old driver was still asleep in the ox cart, so he went back around and woke the old man, advising him to keep the incident tonight a secret. After witnessing his powers, the old man didn't dare to say no and hurriedly dragged his old Huang home. Only his rolled-up straw mat was left on the cart. Xielian hoisted it onto his back and turned around, and saw that Sanlang had already started climbing the hill toward Puchi's shrine with his bag of random scraps. Nearing the crooked, shaky shack that was Puchi's shrine, Sanlang lowered his head and puffed out a laugh, as if seeing something amusing. Xielian approached, saw that he was looking at his sign requesting donations, and cleared his throat. As you see, that's it, really. That's why I said you might not be comfortable here. It's not too bad, Sanlang said. In the past, it had always been Xielian who told others, it's alright. It's not too bad. Hearing it from someone else for the first time gave him complicated feelings. The Puchi shrine door had gone rotten long ago, so Xielian had torn it down and replaced it with some curtains. He lifted the drapes and invited, "Come on in," and Sanlang entered the shrine with him. There wasn't much in the small shrine, only a long altar table, 2 small stools, a small cushion, and a donation box. Xielian reached for the bag in Sanlang's hands, took out the fortune shaker, incense burner, and some paper and miscellaneous stationery, and placed them on the altar table. Then he lit a used red candle someone had stuffed into his hand while he was collecting scraps, and the shrine brightened instantly. Sanlang picked up the fortune shaker, playfully gave it a shake, and then put it down. So, is there a bed? There was only one bed. Wait, I have something. Look at what my sister got me. Only one bed. It's a pin. Bro, this is perfect. Hold on. Xielian silently took the straw mat from his back and unrolled it to show him. Sanlang quirked a brow. There's only one? Oh my god! Xielian only met the youth on his way back from town, so of course he didn't think he needed to buy more than one. If you don't mind, we can squeeze a bit for the night. It's okay. Yeah, so that's gonna happen. That works. Sanlang agreed. Xielian then reached for the broom and swept the floor while Sanlang looked around some more. Dalzang Gugu. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Aren't you missing something in this shrine? Xielian had just finished sweeping and was kneeling on the ground laying out the mat when he heard him. He answered as he patted their bedding. Other than followers, I don't think there's anything missing. Sanlang crouched down too, a hand propping up his chin. What about a divine statue of the god? His words reminded Xielian. How did he forget the most important thing for a shrine? A god statue. A shrine with its idol is no shrine. Although one could say the god himself was present, he couldn't possibly just sit up on the altar all day, every day. Xielian contemplated for a moment and came up with a solution. I bought some paper and ink today. I'll paint a portrait tomorrow. Painting a portrait of himself to be hung in the shrine he built for himself to pray for himself. If the heavenly realm caught wind of this, they'd probably laugh at him for another 10 years. But the cost of commissioning a sculpture was rather hefty, and it took time, too. So Xielian would rather be laughed at for 10 years and save the money. Unexpectedly, Sanlang spoke up. A portrait. I know how to paint one. Need my help? Startled, Xielian smiled. Thanks, but I'm afraid you don't know how to paint the Prince of Xianle. Am I right? After all, most of his portraits had been burned and destroyed 800 years ago. No matter how many were left now, not many people would have seen them before. Sanlang replied, Of course I do. Weren't we talking about him earlier on the cart? Xielian remembered the conversation. That was indeed the case. Earlier he had said, You probably don't know him. But Sanlang did not respond. Hearing him speak now, Xielian was amazed. He finished with the bedding and sat up straight. Sanlang, don't tell me you really do know him. Sanlang sat down on the mat and replied, I do. The expression and tone of voice of this youth when he spoke were both very interesting. He was always smiling, but one could never tell whether his smiles were genuine or if he was actually mocking the other party for being too slow or to keep up with the conversation. Having listened to him chat on the way back, Xielian was rather interested in Sanlang's appraisal of him. Xielian moved to sit next to him and asked, So, what do you think about this Prince of Xianle? Both men looked at each other under the lamp. The flame of the red candle flickered slightly. Sanlang had his back to the candlelight, and it was hard to see his exact expression with his eyes immersed in shadows. After a moment, he replied, I think Junwu must really dislike him. Xielian wasn't expecting this answer and was taken aback. Why do you think that? Why else would he have banished the prince twice? Sanlang replied. Oh, shit. Xielian smiled a little and thought, Indeed, the thinking of a child. He lowered his head and slowly removed his belt. I don't think it has anything to do with likes or dislikes. There are many things in this world that can't be explained that way. Xianlian turned around, removed his white boots, and continued. Besides, one needs to be punished for making mistakes. The Heavenly Emperor was simply doing his duty both times. Perhaps, Sanlang responded, non-committally. Xianlian took off his outer jacket, folded it, and was ready to place it on the altar table. Wanting to say more, he turned around only to see Sanlang's eyes staring at his feet. It was hard to describe that gaze. It was icy but searing, scorching but with a hint of chill. Xianlian looked down and immediately understood. On his right ankle was a black cursed shackle. The first curse was firmly locked around his neck, and the second was tightly fettered around his ankle. Both curses were placed in areas not easily concealed. In the past, if anyone asked, Xianlian would lie and say they were for training purposes, but Sanlang probably wouldn't be so easily placated. However, Sanlang only stared at his ankle for a while without saying anything, so Xianlian lay down on the mat, not worrying over the issue anymore. The youth also obediently lay down next to him, but he didn't remove a single article of clothing. Xianlian figured Sanlang was probably not used to sleeping on the floor like this, and thought perhaps he should find a way to get a bed after all. Let's rest. Xianlian softly blew out the candle, and all became dark once more. Early next morning, when Xianlian opened his eyes, Sanlang wasn't next to him. He looked up and stopped, stunned. On top of the altar, there hung a portrait. It was a portrait of a man with a golden mask, dressed glamorously in extravagant attire. There was a sword in one hand, a flower in the other. It was a beautifully and vividly painted portrait of the god-pleasing prince of Shanle. It had been years since Xianlian saw such a painting, and he stared at it, stunned for a long time before getting up. He got dressed, then pulled back the curtain. Sanlang was just outside, hiding in the shadows alongside the shrine, twirling the broom in his hand and watching the sky with a bored expression. It seemed this youth really didn't like sunlight. The way he was watching the sky looked as if he wanted to pluck the sun and stomp it into pieces. I don't think I've felt the sun in a very long time either. Xianlian went out the door and asked, "Did you sleep well last night?" Sanlang was still leaning against the wall but turned his head and said, "Not bad." Xianlian walked over, took the broom from his hands and asked, "Sanlang, did you paint that portrait in the shrine?" Sanlang replied, "Uh-huh." "It's really well done," Xianlian praised. Sanlang's lips lifted, but he didn't say it. Oh my god, you fucking simp! Me too. Me too. Maybe it was because he'd slept all over the place last night, but his ponytail this morning seemed to be even more crooked, loose and casual. It actually looked quite nice. Casual, but not messy. Rather playful. Xianlian pointed at his own hair and asked, "Want me to help you with that?" Sanlang nodded and headed back inside with Xianlian. When Sanlang sat down, Xianlian let down his black hair and quietly started examining it. Oh, you know he's screaming. You know he is screaming on the inside. You know. Even if the palm prints and fingerprints were perfectly detailed, ghosts always had one flaw in their body creation. The hair of a living person was uncountable, and it came in individual strands that were intricate and distinct. The fake bodies created by ghosts had hair that was either a black blur or a pasted mass like long strips of fabric. Sometimes they just went for a bald look. Xianlian had checked his palm prints and fingerprints the night before, and he had already lowered his guard. But seeing the portrait this morning raised his suspicions again. How would an ordinary person know how to paint this portrait? Yet when he combed his fingers gently through Sanlang's hair, Xianlian couldn't find anything amiss. After a while, Sanlang let out a laugh as if he was ticklish from the touch. He turned his head slightly and looked at him out of the corner of his eye. He said, "Gugu, are you helping tie my hair? Or are you thinking of doing something?" You know what? You know what? We're just gonna need to have a talk later, sir, about what you're saying. We're just gonna have a deep discussion about what is going on in your mind, bro. With his hair down, Sanlang still looked handsome, but there was an added air of wickedness. His question sounded like a tease, and Xianlian grinned. All right, Xianlian said, and quickly finished doing Sanlang's hair. But after that was done, when Sanlang looked at his own reflection in the bucket of water in the corner, he turned back to Xielian with quirked brows. Xielian took a look and quietly cleared his throat. The ponytail had been lopsided before. After Xielian retied it, it was still crooked. Although Sanlang didn't say anything and merely stared at him, Xielian hadn't felt this embarrassed in centuries. He lowered his hands and was just about to suggest they try again when suddenly there was a commotion outside. Sounds of footfalls approached and several loud bellows rang out. Great Immortal! Bewildered, Xielian ran to the door just in time to see his shrine surrounded by a large crowd. Everyone's faces red and excited. The village chief sped ahead towards Xielian and grabbed his hand. Great Immortal, a living god has descended upon our small village. We are so thankful. The villagers were so enthusiastic and passionate that Xielian had to take a few steps back, and he broke into a sweat. It seemed that the old driver from the night before had a big mouth. Xielian clearly told him not to tell. But the instant morning arrived, news had already traveled around the entire village. The villagers had no clue what kind of god was worshipped in Puchi Shrine, but still they all crowded in, wishing to light incense in prayer. It didn't matter who it was. A god was a god, and prayers do no harm. Xielian had initially expected tumbleweeds and crows at the shrine, with only a few coming to offer prayers, so he didn't think to prepare a lot of incense. Who knew that with such hubbub, all the incense would be gone in a second? The little incense burner was filled to the brim, and its heavy smoke enveloped the shrine. Since Xielian had not smelled that scent in a long time, he even choked on it a few times. Sanlang stopped caring about his sloppy hair and sat next to the donation box, one hand propping up his chin, the other grabbing water chestnuts to eat. Stop! Many village girls saw him and blushed. They turned to Xielian. Do you grant? Shut up. Shut the fuck up. I know what you're gonna say. Xielian didn't know what they were going to ask, but felt instinctively that it must be stopped immediately and cried. Xielian didn't know what they were going to ask, but felt instinctively that it must be stopped immediately and cried, "No! Get away!" When the crowd finally dispersed, the altar was filled with fruits and vegetables, even rice and noodles. No matter how this had happened, it was still an abundance of offerings. Xielian swept the floor and took out the trash, and Sanlang followed him out. The shrine is doing pretty well. Xielian shook his head and kept sweeping. This was an unexpected turnout. Normally, there shouldn't be more than 1 or 2 passers-by a month. How can that be? Sanlang asked. Xielian glanced at him and smiled. This was probably thanks to your good luck. Saying so, he recalled that he wanted to change the door curtains, so he took out a new curtain to drape over the front entrance. He stepped back to look at his work and noticed that Sanlang stood still before it. What's wrong? Sanlang stared at the curtains thoughtfully. Following his gaze, Xielian realized he was looking more at the seal drawn onto the fabric. It was a seal that Xielian had drafted in passing before, one that was complex and imposingly well knit. Originally, it was for warding off evil and shielding from intrusions, but since it was Xielian himself who drew it, who knew if it might attract bad luck instead. Since there was no door though, it was still safer to have a protection ward just in case. Seeing the boy fixed in place before the curtain with the seal, Xielian's mind stirred. He called out, "Sanlang." Could it be that the seal had blocked Sanlang out of the door, preventing him from entering the shrine? Okay, I see you, Sanlang. Okay, so that is 3 chapters. So what did I think of these 3 chapters, everyone? Of course, they were amazing, very well written, lovely. We got to see Sanlang, finally. I also really liked that part where all of the heavenly officials were talking about Huaqiang and his past and all the rumors surrounding him. Like, yes, give me the answers I'm looking for, yes. I also feel like there's so many things foreshadowing what's to come. Like when it comes to Windmaster, I am so ready for that. I am so ready. Like I am so happy to meet Huaqiang in the books because literally the RIZZ is still there, man. He's still so freaking cool. Can you imagine how I'm going to be when I finally meet Windmaster in the books?
I'm in danger.
I'm gone. I'm gonna be gone, you guys. I'm not okay. I can barely handle Huaqiang having a conversation with Xielian. Anyways, okay, so In my next reaction, I'm going to react to 7, 8, and 9. And the one after that, I'm hoping will be 10 and 11. And then we're gonna order volume 2 because I've not done that yet and I need to. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. As you know, I'm very excited to continue reading and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye!